Welcome to State of the State. I'm Darlene DeRezzo, and I'm in conversation with Christine Martone. She is the president of the South County League of Women Voters, and also Holly Courage. She is the past president of the Rhode Island League of Women Voters and their current website manager. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, we're happy to be here.
Thank you. So now I understand there are 3 chapters.
Yes.
You helm South County, and you've been at the helm there for 4 years.
Correct.
How did you get involved?
Well, there was some years back, the South County Narragansett League the South Kingstown Narragansett League had lost members, and so they approached us in Westerly and asked if we would be willing to reconstitute the league. So it came from South Kingstown, Narragansett to now Westerly, and so we incorporated and made it the South County League about 8 or 9 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your journey to...
Well,
okay.
This was totally unintentional, but I had a child in not kindergarten, preschool. I had a child in preschool, and a group of other mothers came to me and they said, "You've got to come to lunch with us for the League of Women Voters. We've got a babysitter for the kids." So I went to a bag lunch, and they had a speaker, and I got to talk with adults and find out about issues while we were at it. And it just kept going from there.
Yeah, what issues at the time
were
important
that's
to you?
45 years ago.
Wow, so you've been involved for that long with the organization.
Yeah, I have
in
been
some
in
capacity.
that, yes, and not only that, I was president of the Providence League for 8 years, and then I was president of the State League for 12 years.
Wow.
So that, as I said, so now I'm just sitting back, and she says, I do the website. I'm also the treasurer of the League's education fund, which is, if you know about nonprofits, there are C3s and C4s. Well, the nonprofit part is the tax deductible part is the C3, and I'm the treasurer of that.
Okay. I
also do a website for the National League on issues that one of the real things about the League is that supposedly our positions, we might as well read opinions, all come from studying issues.
Okay.
And some of this stuff these go on at all levels of the League, at the local level, the state level, and on the national level. We study issues, or at least we try.
Yeah.
And then we come to an agreement, consensus on what we believe, and then that's when we start lobbying. But it's it's been a long time. But in any event, a lot of places develop a lot of detailed information on these issues, and they said, we've got to be able to access it. Even the little tiny local league studies, we want to be able to access that. So they came up with a volunteer group to post all this information online, and that's what I do now.
Very good.
For that as well.
Now, this is a nonpartisan organization, right? So do you want to tap into its mission and how this organization came to be?
Oh, it is actually more out of activism than anything else. Okay. Is that people were women were working in the women's sphere. They were working on everything. They worked on abolition. They worked on temperance. They worked on child labor. They worked on all schools, all sorts of things. And they came to the conclusion, if we can't vote, we can't do anything. We can't have any control. We can't influence this stuff. So then that's when they all got together and started working together for women's suffrage.
And actually, the women didn't help very much when Prohibition came around, because that was one of the issues as well that was a big one for them at the time.
Yeah.
But they were all, they just couldn't do anything if they couldn't vote.
Yeah.
So they did, and they fought for this. And I mean, this is not, people keep wanting instant results, and you say, Susan B. Anthony was working for, she died before before women got the right to vote.
Yeah.
It's like she worked her whole entire life on this. These things don't move fast at all, and you just sometimes have to persist on all of that.
So in what spheres has the women's vote shifted things, right? So where has the women's vote sort of made its mark? What's maybe changed?
Well, I think the big one is the vote itself. If it weren't for the women who went through all the machinations they did to get the vote, I don't think it would have ever been passed by the government. They were jailed, they were force-fed, they were beaten, they were called names, they right, Holly?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there were so many they worked. Oh, right. There's so many things I can't even get them out.
But as far as like the women's vote, like, you know, swaying or influencing something, is there anything that comes to mind where if it weren't for the women's vote, things may have gone another way?
Well, choice.
Yeah.
Choice definitely in Rhode Island. If it weren't for the women fighting for choice in Rhode Island, it was, I don't know if you were at the State House when it was 2 years ago when we finally got it written into Rhode Island law.
Yep. And when we got the right to vote one, remind me?
1920.
1920.
Yes.
Right before some major world events.
Yeah, and actually, it all started in about 1875 or 1873, right? The whole suffrage movement began when women started to.
Well, it's hard to pin it down. I mean, I could read you a list of all the different organizations at all the different times, but there were just all sorts of little ones. There were little suffrage groups in almost every single village in Rhode Island. Wow. And it's like, oh yeah, we had a lot more members back then than we do now, because this was it. This was the big thing, and it was.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Providence League was the first league to be incorporated in the United States. Am I right?
No, I don't know. It's very hard. The thing
Liz always tells me that.
Well, yeah. Well, the League of Women Voters was suggested at the National American Women's Suffrage Association before the 19th Amendment passed. It was suggested at our convention the year before. And as soon as that happened, two groups ran back to Rhode Island and got themselves charters from the legislature.
Very motivated.
They got there were two charters. One ended up being the State League of Women Voters, and the other ended up being the Providence League of Women Voters. And this was before the 19th Amendment actually passed.
Wow.
So, and then I guess February 14th, 1920, then finally the national organization was formally established, and there were just a lot of different complications that I looked up all of this stuff for the 100th anniversary, which of course got torpedoed by COVID. Yeah. I mean, we had all sorts of things planned, and I looked up all this history, and I have more history than I can even begin to spit out.
Share something fun in your research. What would be something fun to share?
For Rhode Island, I told you that the whole suffrage movement split in two over the 14th and 15th Amendment. One of the leaders of the American women's suffrage, the president of the American Women's Suffrage Association was Julia Ward Howe, who was living in Portsmouth at the time. So this whole thing was being led this whole national organization was being led by somebody in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the first National Women's Convention was held in Worcester, Massachusetts,
Right.
but it was organized by somebody who was living in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I can't think of her name.
Oh, you can check your notes.
I am going to look at this name so I get this right. It is Paulina Wright Davis.
Okay.
You know Davis Park? That was her husband. Davis Park in Providence. That was her husband. She moved to Rhode Island when she married him, but she had been working in suffrage for a long time. And that's one of the interesting things about Rhode Island suffrage, because this was not a backwater back then.
Yeah.
All these suffrage people came through here all the time. They were really good friends with Elizabeth Buffum Chase and all the, what's her name? Sarah J. Eddy. There was a famous painter. She has these famous portraits of Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. They were all friends. These people Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony came through Rhode Island all the time, and it's really wild. A lot of them had no idea that Portsmouth was such a big hive of activity, because basically there were railroads, ferries, and one more thing that was coming through, all came through Portsmouth.
Yeah, the access.
So that people coming up from New York a lot of times came through Portsmouth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, and then there's Alva Belmont. Alva Vanderbilt Belmont, and she was wildly into suffrage in her later years, so she was holding all sorts of things going on down there.
Ooh, like what?
Oh, she was she would hold these national conferences focusing on suffrage down in Newport. And at one point, this was another split of all the suffrage people. There was the main group, and then there was a much more active group. Now, what's their title? Their title was the Congressional Union for Women's Suffrage. And thanks to Alva Belmont, the summer headquarters was in Newport. Oh yes, and they held a bunch of events down in Newport too, national events.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I wanted to circle back to the nonpartisan question you had, because it is difficult, I think, as Holly mentioned before, to be nonpartisan. I try to view it as an opportunity to engage people, to teach them more about the right to vote and the opportunity they have and the privilege they have to vote. And so I look at it that way, and I tell them, I don't care how you vote, but I want you to vote. It's as important to everybody. And I think, too, the more important thing for me is the local elections. They're the ones that really change things for us. I mean, we look at this as a national, like where everyone is all excited about this national election, but really all the changes that happen are in our little towns, in our town hall meetings, and in our school committee meetings. So I try to make people think about the fact that they do have a say and their vote does count. So that's kind of how I deal with it. I mean, I always tell them I have my own opinion, but you know, that's beside the point. It's more important for them to know more about voting and how to vote.
Yeah. And do you know how many women are registered to vote in Rhode Island and how many are actively voting?
Good question, but no.
Okay, well, we can find out.
Yeah, we can.
Well, maybe we can find out. I mean, it's sort of hard to tell once you get into the statistics over at the Board of Elections and all that, because sometimes they just don't keep the records that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
but we have a good, the other thing that we do is we have a very good relationship with the Secretary of State's office. Going back, of course, I haven't been in the league as long as Holly has, but going...
Well, you have to be careful with the Secretary of State because that is an elected office.
Sure thing.
That is an elected office, and one thing that's unusual about Rhode Island is that the Secretary of State does not run the elections. The Board of Elections does. And that's because, as I said, I tell people, well, it's interesting. Rhode Island actually has very good election laws. That's because we haven't trusted each other for years.
But, you know, we do. We have a great relationship with that office. Going back to when I just started with Nellie Gorbea and now with Greg Amore. They provide us with, we do a lot of, obviously, voter registration. They provide us with tons of forms for the voter information, for the voter guide, for the voter information and voter registration. They provide us with support if we need it. We try to interact with them, and they are very supportive of the league for those reasons, for our voting. And voter registration we do. All our leagues do.
How do you do that?
We go to craft fairs.
Craft fairs. But one of the more exciting ones is going to INS ceremonies for naturalized citizens.
Yes.
That's one of the more exciting ones that they're doing now. And I mean, the thing is, I go back way longer than motor voter, and you had to be an official registrar to register voters. You actually, and we had these forms in quadruplicate that you you really had to bear down on the form to get it done in quadruplicate, and each copy went to a different part. This is pre-computers, and one of the things is that at that time, when you had to be a registrar, there were two kinds of registrars. There were registrars who only registered in the city that they lived in. They were that. And then there were statewide registrars. And we worked extensively. I was a statewide registrar, and we worked extensively with the Board of Elections because at that time, the Secretary of State did not butt into this.
That I did not know.
They did not butt into this. This was the territory of the Board of Elections, and you went trained to register voters, and you had to sign every single registration form, and the voter got a copy of their signed form so that you could actually go in. If they didn't get your registration into the books correctly, you could stand there with your proof that you registered.
Wow.
Well, you know, talking about registering voters, as we started to say, we go to craft fairs, we go to libraries, we go to organizations like early intervention, those kinds of places. Schools, you know, like PTA meetings and senior centers, and you name it, we go there. And it is time-consuming but fun. We find because there's so many voters already registered in Rhode Island, we don't get a whole lot of people as we go through our towns and cities, but we do get some. We get new people that come in and move into town, so they get registered by us, or people that had for years not registered and decided, yeah, this is a time for me to register. So it's pretty fun. We always have fun. We give out information. We do what we can to engage. And our league spearheaded, as Holly mentioned before, the naturalization programs. We've been doing that for a year now. We go every week on a Tuesday. We have different teams that go in and register. We register at least half of the individuals who are sworn in, so that's about 25 people. And it's great to see these individuals, particularly because they're so excited about the the idea that they could vote. And I look back and I say, you know, we're so complacent about voting, and people who have never voted before or who have wanted to, they are so excited to come and sign that form and get registered. It's just heartwarming. It's one of the best things that we do. I have fun with that and love seeing the people.
You must meet so many people.
Yeah.
My favorite was this this group of Russian immigrants, and they came to the point where, sign up for a party. Do I have to? And I said, listen, you can sign up for any party you want. Nobody will know the difference when you vote. You can register as a Republican and vote for all Democrats, or vice versa. And they thought that was the most fantastic thing that they had ever heard, that nobody would know what their vote was.
Yeah. Now, we have less than 10 minutes, and I know you brought some items that you'd like to share with our audience. Do you want to go first, Christine?
So our league in particular has been doing these voter guides. I can hold it up there. And we are fortunate to be supported by the League of Women Voters Education Fund. And we do raise money for these as well. And it goes to because of the demographics in Providence and in Newport, their demographics are more compressed. We are in a pretty rural area, you know, Westerly, maybe in Narragansett, little towns, but the others are pretty spread out. So what we do is provide the voter guides to all the rural areas and the surrounding areas, and that gives them an opportunity to read what their candidates want to do and to make the decision before they go into the voter booth. We also have programs. I want to mention one in particular, the Susan B. Wilson Award that we run. The money, again, was given by Susan B. Wilson from our particular league. However, it's a statewide program for teachers. Any teacher who is from K to 12th grade can apply for this. It's a money gift of $3,000 for the first, $2,000 for the first prize, $1,000 for the second, and $500. All they have to do is prove that they've done an innovative program in civics for their children. We've been doing this for many years, and so I would like to encourage any teacher out there to please sign up and join us with that. And another thing that the leagues do are programming. We had Ken Block talking about his book, Disproven. We've had No Time to Fail, the movie that was done during the pandemic in Rhode Island, talking about voting and the safety of voting. And we do other programs. We have celebrations, Women's Equality Day. And this year we had a real celebration at Cabaret at the South County at the United Theater, which was sold out, which was great because it was a fundraiser. So we do a whole lot of things that I'm just scratching the surfaces, as Holly
now,
said.
Does the league endorse any candidates?
No.
Okay, so, and does the league have anything that they particularly want to sway voters on, or just no? It's just strictly, here are the facts, here's what the candidates are.
I wouldn't say that we don't try. I mean, the mission, the official mission of the League of Women Voters is to influence public policy through informed vote. You know, through being informed voters, knowing the facts rather than, so there are definitely things that we work for.
But not candidates.
Not candidates. Candidates, it actually depends on your area, it turns out, that some areas, other states, but not Rhode Island. No, Rhode Island, it is just, that would kill any kind of idea of nonpartisanship in Rhode Island, absolutely, so that we don't do that here. But we definitely do try. I mean, we did work codifying that a few years ago, and we've definitely worked a lot on voting issues.
Yes.
I mean, that has been one of the fascinating things, is that Rhode Island got involved with something called poll running, because the Providence Journal used to pay us to get the results from them straight from the polling precincts on election night. They used to pay us. And the result was, man, did we know about what happened in polling places, and we came to consensus on a lot of that stuff, and we pushed through a lot of stuff. We did lobby on the voting machines, and had our voting machines all in place in Rhode Island way before Bush Gore blew everything up to smithereens on voting machines. We were in place, and they did a fantastic job on it, as far as even the voting, the real purists on the voting machines wanted. We definitely had that.
We are down to 3 minutes.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Yes, and I know you have a
There's
lot
a lot more to talk about.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
What's foremost? What's most important to bring to the audience attention in our few minutes left?
Well, my message was that this says it's about your job, your taxes, your social security, your children's education. It's about you and your family. Vote.
The right to vote.
Yeah.
The right to vote.
Yeah. And also, I'm going to add one other thing, and that is to be more aware of the workings of the government. Learn a little bit more about civics. My understanding from the Secretary of State is that a generation and a half have not been taught civics.
It needs to get in the schools.
Yeah.
It needs to be in the schools. We've
Yeah.
actually done a few programs on civics education. So it's very important that
Yeah.
children are learning. What do you think women voters are inclined to be invested in, or need to learn about, or want to learn about, that might be unique to women voters?
In regard to our organization, or to women as a whole?
Women as a whole, like, anything that you feel like
I don't know.
might be unique.
I don't really
or-
feel that it's men against women. I really don't feel like there's
No.
huge differences.
But I feel like sometimes women don't see a place for themselves in government. I mean, I know we have a lot of women in government now as time goes on, but there's still not as many.
women.
If you look at some of the predictions that Alice Paul, who did the Equal Rights Amendment, made, one of them was there'd be a women president by 2020. There would be, at least half the Congress women. So there's a lot to work on.
Okay.
Well, do you remember Jennifer Lawless when she ran for Congress? She was a Brown professor at the time, and she was studying why women didn't run for office.
And
it was that women just don't think of think of themselves as not confident that she said women don't respond, oh yeah, I really think I could do a fantastic job as they're there, but I don't really feel ready. Women always said they were, and guys would go, oh yeah, I think I'm a quick learner. I can do this. And it was stunning. But I even filled out her form at that time, Jennifer's form at that time. No, it never occurred to me. No.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
and
you.
we'd love to come back and give you more information and bore you
Sure.
more, but it's been
Sure.
fun, and thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Holly. I'm Darlene DeRezzo. Thanks for watching. Please visit our social media accounts. We've got one on Facebook, Twitter, and a new one on Instagram that is @StateOfTheStateRI.